to order the work session for the Narragansett Town Council. Today's work session is to discuss the resolution requesting the General Assembly approval of legislation for the issuance of $3 million bonds for affordable housing in the town of Narragansett. And just some background on suggested action. A resolution requesting the General Assembly's approval of legislation for the issuance of $3 million bonds for affordable housing in Narragansett was on the April 1st, 2024 Town Council agenda for approval. The Town Council discussed the matter as well as received comments from the Affordable Housing Trust Collaborative and the public. It was decided that more discussion was needed with bond counsel, and the finance director and town council voted to continue the matter. At the meeting on April 15th, 2024, town council voted to schedule the work session on April 22nd, 2024 at 6 p.m. to further discussion. So we do have our town council here for any questions that they may have. We have our finance director, Ms. Christine Wilson, our bond counsel, Mr. David Ferrara. We have our community development director, Mr. Michael DeLuca, and we have the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust Collaborative, Mr. Nick Edwards. So at this time, I'm going to have our finance director give a presentation and overview. Only because we had questions just on the financial aspect of this. I think, again, everybody is supporting any opportunities for affordable housing in Narragansett. But just to give the full picture, we wanted to make this transparent and public. So with that, I will turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Council President Jasinski and council members. Good evening. I just thought it would be good to give a little bit of background on our current debt and debt going forward, and maybe some options of things to consider. First, I wanted to start with our Standards & Poor's rating of AA+, and we have a Moody's rating of I don't even know how you say that, small A2 right now, and we actually have another Standards & Poor rating meeting on May 1st, because we're going to sell, bond for the $4.5 million. So we'll have another call on May 1st. I know this is small, but it does show our current debt, audited debt. This does not include 2024. So as you can see, in 2023, we're at $28 million of total debt, a little bit over. We've been staying pretty consistent, 28 to 30, back and forth through the years. These are some of the debt service ratios that I've been talking about. So you can see historically where we've been and how our population has decreased. The net values obviously increased year over year. The valuations, full valuations, our gross bonded debt, again, like I said, stays around 8 to 30 million. The gross per capita, you want to keep that under $2,500. So we've been close in, actually in 2024, it's unaudited, but we're estimating about $2,057 of gross debt per capita. Again, you want to stay under $2,500. And then our ratio of gross debt to estimated full value is about, 0.5%. You want to stay under 3%, so we're looking good on that one. I have a estimated 2025, should we go to bond for the $3 million.
I'm sorry, can I just ask for the ratio of gross debt to estimated full value is supposed to stay at what rate? I missed that.
Under 3.
Under 3, 3.0.
3.0,
Okay.
Yes.
So we're in pretty good shape.
2.5, 3.0.
Okay.
Yes, some of them were good, and then there's some were not.
Can I ask you a question?
Oh.
Because the 4.5 million, is that road bond, or what is that bond?
That's half road bond and half
half.
infrastructure.
Right, okay.
So we had the Envine Estates storm drain, some
Right,
roads, and the
right,
front building. Yep.
I just couldn't remember.
Okay. Here's some other ratios we have. Again, there's the net direct debt to assessed value, under 3%. We're at about 0.5%. Overall, about 0.5%. These are debt service ratios that the state does every 2 years that get reported on. That's why 17, 19, 21, 23. Our overall debt to net pension liability and OPEB liability is about 3%. You want to stand at 9.2. And this is the last one is where we're headed to warning stages. So it's our governmental debt service, so all of it to the pension actuarial determined contribution and the OPEB contributions to your government expenses. So we're hovering right below what they like to see for a max of 22.5%. And like I said, you know, pension contributions are going to continue to grow. So then I thought of some other considerations for affordable housing revenues. There's the discussion of having additional taxation being passed on to the General Assembly. There's an issue maybe with fairness of doing that by adding an additional tax to specific types of residential properties. You'd be taxing on the use, not just the real estate. And this has basically got to do with the short-term rentals, applying them. So maybe it would require a special use permit to do this, but if you do it less than 1 year, and the properties with a special use permit are subject to the commercial rate. So that's kind of what's happening, what we're seeing around. Also, you know, potential zoning modifications with those. So that's all got to do with the extra tax. The town council could designate or restrict funding from the unassigned fund balance. We're at 19.9% as of 2023 audited numbers. Right now, there's legislation being considered that would allow municipalities to set additional conveyance tax rate for residential properties sold in excess of $800,000 at $10 per 500. And it would have to go into an affordable housing activity, and it has to be distributed within 2 years. I know that's being considered. I don't know where it is right now, but it is still on the floor. Another legislation would allow a municipality to include non-owner occupied residential properties used for short-term rentals for tourist or transit use to be assessed at Class 2 properties on or after, you know, December 31st, 2024. Again, that would, Class 2 is our commercial rate. Also, that has potential zoning modifications with that. And that's all I have for you. Do you have any questions?
Thank you for that presentation. Any council members have any questions that they would like to ask of our finance director?
I don't know if you know this, Chris, but the two bills that you put up from the General Assembly were both for the Senate. Do you know if there are equivalent bills for the House?
I do not know at this time.
Okay, because without that, then they won't go anywhere.
I don't believe
If you
there
have
are.
spare time, you can give it a look.
I don't believe there are, as far as I know, but I think those are great bills proposed by the Senate.
Yeah, but they still won't go anywhere.
Right, but we can ask our
I
legislators.
just don't
if
know.
they-
I just didn't have the time to look. I didn't look.
Right, that's okay. I just was curious. I can look it up myself.
Is that, any other questions? Counselor Kopak, I can go
Well,
to.
not in the presentation, but I do have a question about the idea of putting this, this bond on the ballot, because if I understand correctly, you know, we can put something on the ballot, we can put a bond on the ballot, but until we're actually using it, it's not relevant to the rating, our bond ratings, et cetera. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's what I mean. It can go on the ballot. That doesn't matter. It would be at the time we sell the bond or go to issue the bond.
Right.
We'd have to check our ratios and what we have and
So we
things
could
of those
go, we could
natures.
literally go years without doing anything with
Issuing
the
the
bond,
bond.
right? So putting it on the ballot doesn't really have much impact. It has no impact on our rating. That's correct, right?
Correct. Right? Right. Yes, no, on rating, on the rating or anything.
Not at this level.
Not
Yeah,
at this level.
okay,
I mean, if
that's,
it was a $100 million
Right,
bond, you know, that
Yeah.
would conceivably impact your ratings from
Right.
S&P and whatnot, but
not
this
in
is not
this, yeah.
that league.
So you're saying if it was we put forward a $100 million bond, which we won't do, it would be, it would affect the rating, but it wouldn't,
Well,
is that what you were saying?
So S&P and Moody's asks, what is the authorized but unissued debt of the community? And you have unissued but authorized debt, and you have had for many years, of your 2012 road bond.
Right.
And I'm just saying, they're not large numbers,
Right.
given the nature of the town. So if you're asking, if the authorized but unissued debt does not impact your ratings, I was just clarifying that at some point it could, but I don't think this is
Okay.
in that
Thank you.
category, because it's not of an amount
Right.
to be
That's what I thought.
substantive to this town of Narragansett.
Thank you.
I have one other question about bonds, and that is, if we don't use the fund that has been, allotted in a bond, I'm thinking about the library, for example. There's a significant number of, we had a $5.8 million bond. It doesn't look like we're going to use $5.8 million. What happened? I thought we weren't using it.
If you issue, on the library we have.
We have used the libraries, all their funding. But we do have other bonds that we had issued in the past, and they didn't use all the money because some things came in cheaper. Remember-
You can, so if you issued a bond,
cancel it.
say for 10 million for, and this has happened to Narragansett, in sewers, and for the one specific area, and then the project is brought under budget, and you have unauthorized but unissued bonds after a period of years, you can cancel them by ordinance. So
Okay.
it would be 7 or 8 years. North Kingstown recently canceled a bond that's been sitting around for that long, because it's
Okay.
never going to be used.
And that changes our numbers again, right? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Ferrandi, any questions?
Yeah, I have a few questions. I realize that the money is when it's spent is when it actually, goes into effect, I guess. But I mean, why would we want to do a bond if we're not going to use it? I guess what I'm trying to say is this under 27%, we could have $10 million. When are we going to use the fund? The road bond, we can only use so much at each time. Correct? As far as, if we put this $3 million, that would put us over the cap of where we're at this under the 25% or 30%, whatever you said.
Well, we'd have to run the numbers again, because every year is a different operating budget. Every year you have a different unassigned fund balance. There's a lot of moving parts.
Another-
I'm trying to find a better way to answer.
In other words, like, would we, if this bond goes through with $3 million, it's almost like it gets in line with all the other bonding that's there. So we'd be how long in the future we'd really need it now if we were going to use it, but we're only going to be able to use so much because we have other bonds that we're going to be putting so much in. We wouldn't do the whole road bond in one shot in 1 year because it financially doesn't make sense for us.
Right.
So I know what you mean, but it's almost like we either need it or we don't need it kind of thing. Or if there's other funding mechanisms, with the state, we can utilize that too, or maybe a lower number or something like that. That's what I'm trying to get at, the fiscal responsibility end of it a little more.
Right. I mean, if we did this next year, say in 2025, we wouldn't go to road bond. Road bond would wait.
Yeah. That's what I mean. So
Yeah, you're not
everything,
gonna, yeah, we could go. It's not like we can't go, but it's affording it and coming up with the debt service payments every year and things of that nature.
right. I mean, you would want to utilize, I'm sure, the road bonds first, and then, as more bonding comes in, use it in that manner, then,
That's
lack of a better
your
words,
call.
banking a bond that's there, but we really don't want to use it. We need it. So, I think it all has to kind of fit in with the whole fiscal thing and plan that out a little bit on the roads.
Yeah, I mean, this last bond, the last road bond was what, 2012, I believe, David? And we're just finishing the last 2.6 million with this 4.5 million in 2024, so,
Right.
right.
And the new one's what,
20 million,
Yeah,
and that'll be spread out over several years, yeah.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Lawler?
I actually have a couple more questions on the road bond. Should this go on the ballot and should this pass, what would happen to our road bond? Would we start picking roads we're not going to do, or how would that work?
Well, right, because we have this bond, 4.5 going through right now, and we've already started some of the projects. So it would be put on hold until a year or two down the road. We do have that federal grant through ARPA, the state, and over the next 2 years, we have to contribute $1 million towards the road resurfacing. So that will be going on, but there will be no mill and overlay total construction of roads.
So this would be delaying roads?
Yes.
Okay, something to consider, especially since there are other ideas you put forward. The other question I have is as far as the pensions. You mentioned pension, we'll be walking into a pension liability that's going to continue to grow. So for the two of you as the finance experts for our town, what would this do to us financially as far as, especially looking at pension and other obligations we have? Should we put another $3 million bond on to the town?
I don't, it's $3 million. If we did it on the roads or we did it on affordable housing, it still would be affordable. We just have to watch that one ratio that we were talking about with the annual determined contributions, actuarial determined contributions. We would have to watch that. I don't know what happens if you go in over the limit. I don't know what the state would do. You might have to come up with a funding plan. I am not sure. But I know the contributions for pension will continue to rise until about 33, because the liability continues to grow.
And that is concerning because you're predicting to us that for the next, 5 years, could be increase of the maximum 4% tax rate.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's an awful lot of burden on the town. Can you explain a little bit more, Chris, about the unassigned fund balance and how that would work should we decide to push this into a fund?
Sure. So what the council could agree to do is to take an amount of money. You can determine that. We can have another discussion about that, 500,000, $1 million. Right now, it's about 12 million unassigned fund balance, currently at 19.9%. Our policy states 10 to 16%. We should have a range for our unassigned fund balance. And you could restrict that to affordable housing usage, and we would just keep it in that trust because we created the new account now. We would keep it in that trust, and it would stay there for whatever projects come up.
Okay.
But you could easily do that as well.
Thank you.
Councilor Cecilia Badal?
Just wanted to ask about the road bonds, because I think I sponsored the bond for the roads, and the leftover is 2.6, correct?
Correct. It's going under the 4.5.
Right, so that was a while, so again, it's priorities, right? The roads.
Right.
Affordable housing. So we did some of the roads, but we still have some left over, that 2.6. So again, another decision on how you want to use the money.
Well, the 2.6 is already allocated. We're going to go and we're going to close in June with the balance of the 2.6 and then 1.9 of the new money.
And we're
So
talking about-
that's 4.5 that we're doing right now.
Right, but we're talking about the 3 million for the next budget, correct?
Correct.
Right, I don't want to
Yes.
get confused
No,
about
next budget.
what's in debt service now. We're talking about next year, if it gets voted on the
Correct.
ballot. Okay, just want to be clear on that. Thanks, Chris.
Any other questions? Councilor? Okay. All right, so-
Can I just ask one?
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah,
Just
and then I'll go to
got
me. Sure.
thinking.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you said the wheels, right? So if this is in the 2026 budget, That's what we're saying, it's for the next year, right? Not fiscal year 2025, if we do this bond.
Fiscal year '25, we could still allocate funds to go to bond with the legal fees and closing fees, et cetera. It's about 60,000, 70,000 usually. We could budget that in the 24-25 budget we're working on right now.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. If we don't spend it, it goes back into fund balance, but we could do that.
Yeah, so it's great. So we do have other funding mechanisms. I think we all agree that affordable housing is important here. So whether it be the bond or, just the fund balance and being able to allocate that, that's an option where we're not going to have to pay interest on that, right? So that's a great funding mechanism as well. And there's other options as well. If some of the legislation that the Senate proposed passes, that would be a great funnel or revenue stream for, just having that as an option for affordable housing funding. I do have a question, and I do want to thank the Affordable Housing Trust Collaborative for all the efforts and work that they've been doing. They're very passionate about affordable housing. We know it's an issue in this town. So with that, I would like to know if any money does get allocated for this purpose, what specific projects, or is there an outline of what this money would be used for, and can you describe that to the general public? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Councilwoman, and thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. So I think before we get there, if ultimately this council passes it, the voters will decide. Then I think we decide after the fact what we would do. I think there's a lot of things we could do with this proposed funding, but I think, look, as we know, $3 million is not a lot of money. I mean, it's going to be difficult to purchase property with $3 million, but I think that's a question for the future. Let's see if it gets passed first. And, we've been working diligently for the past 3 years at all sorts of different projects, state-owned land, federal-owned land, town-owned land. We've talked to private developers across this town and state who may want to come and put some housing, condos, no matter what it is here. But I think once we get the money, we'll be able to again, see what's out there. And just to cite another current project that's ongoing right now is the Boston Neck Road property RFP. That RFP process will be finishing up pretty soon. So it'll be interesting to work with the town manager and the town staff to see what is out there. And then look, if we get that $3 million, maybe we can approach some of these people who have applied to say, look, here's what we have, here's what's available, here's what we're thinking. But at this time, that's about the best answer I can give you.
Can you, sorry, but as an example, so say we're the day after the election, this bond is approved, we're ready to go and roll. What is an example? I know you have, individuals on the committee that have worked with other entities to help with opportunities for affordable housing development. So I was just so that I'm trying to be just giving examples for the public to understand what this funding would be used for, like just a specific, project
Sure,
that.
and if I don't cover it, I'll call on my vice chair,
yeah.
Cliff Tyler,
Yes,
or
please,
Susan
yeah.
for some things
I
here.
have
But
it right here. So
I mean, look, I think a lot of it,
he's going to give you
too-
the sheet. Rehabilitation of homes so people can stay in their homes for first-time buyers. You go ahead. Read
Yeah,
it.
no,
Go
absolutely.
ahead.
I'll paraphrase it. I'm
ahead.
happy to read this section of the
Yeah.
proposed law here. But, I think, look, like Susan said, programs for first-time home buyers, working with organizations like Habitat for Humanity or the Women's Development Corporation, POA. There are so many great, companies and resources out there who are working diligently across our state on affordable housing. But again, I just think, there's loans we can do, there's first-time home buyers, there's maybe some grants, and it's all spelled out right here that, it is designed for the full intent to be affordable housing. And Cliff, Susan, if I missed anything, feel free to jump in.
Well, I think the preservation and rehabilitation to keep people in the existing houses is an important part. So when we look at the $3 million, it's not just to acquire land, but those other opportunities that will also help with housing, I think, are important. And you did mention the nonprofits as an opportunity as well. So all of those are buckets that we've discussed at length about the language in the bond and how that would work.
Thank you. I appreciate that that answered my question, so thank you very much. Any other questions from the council?
I've got something
Sure,
else.
Council Brandy.
If maybe it can be answered or not, does anyone know on the staff here or anything that other cities have been bonding just for the affordable housing within themselves, other towns, or are they waiting for that? I know there's a lot of state money that's there, they're putting into development and all, and I think that's a big bucket that's there. I don't know if there's any grants available to help this, or maybe we wouldn't have to borrow as much if we got a little bit of granting. But how many are really taking it upon themselves to bond just for, affordable housing or, these type of projects? I mean, it's, like the RIMFAC loans, they have first-time home buyers or something like that. So there's rules, and I'd be interested in, once it does happen, what are the rules? Is it just for affordable housing? Is it going to be deed restricted? All that kind of stuff, too. So
I
first
think-
question, I guess, yeah.
I think Attorney Ferrara could probably best speak to that, but I mean, we have heard of some other examples throughout the state who are going out to bond, but Dave, I don't know if you have any insight on any recent examples of municipalities who have successfully gone on the ballot for this. I know we talked about this at one of our meetings we had.
Well, the only example of actually being implemented was in 2000, that I know of. In 2006, the town of Charlestown borrowed $1 million for funding affordable housing. I don't know what they used it for, because I don't represent them, but I think it was for a land purchase, perhaps, for nonprofit development. But that was a long time ago.
Providence did a $20 billion bond in 2021, strictly for affordable housing.
Okay. All right, so there's a few.
Sure, so.
There's a few, but it's not, it's not that commonplace that it's strictly just for the bonding of affordable housing. That's all I just wanted to know.
No, it's a good
Because,
point, but-
maybe, I think there's a good amount of money. It's just a matter, a lot of it may be in the state budget, what they're doing, and if the towns can't capture some of that, it's not really that much per se, but I mean, it will have a few ramifications on how we use it and when we can. So I
Sure.
just want to make sure we're able to get, so if we do it, it's something that we're going to be able to utilize.
Sure, and I think it's a good point, Councilman Franny, but I think, look, I mean, plus being where we are in 2024, I don't think we've ever seen a housing crisis or a shortage like this. I mean, look at the assessments in town, they've doubled almost in 4 years in some cases, so we're in an unprecedented time. So, I said it before, I'll say it again, if not now, when? That's our thinking, and I think there's a lot of data and a lot of evidence that shows that we'll have, good programs available. And look, we don't have to spend the money right away. We preferably should if it's passed by the voters, but I think it's a lot of wait and see what's out there too.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. I agree, if not now, then when, but also this council has been putting forward ordinances that are directly working to impact housing affordability in the House. So I do want to say that we've been working diligently on that. But yes, I agree, it is a crisis, so thank you. Any other questions from the council?
Well, the one thing I was hoping that we'd get more from this workshop is a specific plan. It's like when you came to us with the RFP, it was like, let's see what comes in from developers. So I was hoping for more of a specific plan today. A couple of the ideas that thrown out, one I think is a really great one, is rehabbing of current dwellings. As a matter of fact, I've spoke over the weekend with a few people who have homes that they would consider having a deed restriction on, but there's no meat to this. There's a great sentiment we all believe in, but there's no plan, and that to me is not a good way to have a bond go forward without saying this is exactly what we're looking to do, or these are the types of things. It comes with great sentiment, and I can see where you're coming from, but it's just not enough explanation for me at this point in time.
Thank you. Could I respond, Madam
Yeah,
President?
of course.
Thank you. So it's a good point, Councilwoman Lower, but I think we have some time here. I mean, the General Assembly still has to pass this, if this is passed by the council. The voters have to decide in November for the general election. So we have some time. I mean, and I welcome you. Join us at the Affordable Housing Collaborative meetings. We have great meetings. There's a lot of people from the public who attend, and it's an open forum for ideas to be shared. So I mean, I don't want to cite hypothetical ideas here tonight. If you'd like me to, I would, but I mean, I just think we've covered what we could do with this. I mean, I'd love to have a plan in front of me right now, but it's tough to do that when you don't have any access to resources. So I think the plans will be coming. I think we will welcome what the public has to say about this and all of you and honorable members of the council. But I mean, I would think this would be a great opportunity if we have this money to maybe purchase some land and have one of these nonprofits or someone come in and just do this on our behalf, so we're not having to manage, develop, et cetera. But those are my initial thoughts.
And I'd just like to add, we do have a plan. The 3 million, we talked long and hard about the buckets, how it was going to be spent, what would we do, acquiring land. We even talked about, acquiring larger parcels, the infill lots, grants for first-time buyers for affordable housing, so it would be a down payment, grants and loans to preserve, rehabilitate the existing housing, grants and loans to develop and for nonprofit to build housing units. So I think that's a pretty good plan. I mean, I don't think that's a pie in the sky. I think those are important issues that this $3 million will address sooner than later. It's in the language of the bond, and I disagree with Councilwoman Lawler. I think she's wrong. The plan is pretty set in stone.
Well, actually, Susan, it's not. It's not a plan. There are a lot of ideas that are great ideas, and so nothing is set in stone. So we just see it differently is all.
Well, I guess I see it as a plan.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the council? No. Any other feedback? Okay, so I know I had you come up here, Mr. DeLuca. Any comments or feedback?
I could just add. There's a question. Okay, I just want to follow through with, follow on with a commentary about Nick Edwards. We do have a plan, a schematic plan, which is the housing element of the town comprehensive plan. And that's not as detailed as I think Councilwoman Lawler is interested in, but it does project our interests and our desires in terms of the family housing that we're seeking and the elderly housing, special housing also. That's been in the plan since 2017. But to your point, it would be a good idea, I think, to put on paper a strategic plan, which is more narrow, more direct, something that might speak to speak to the next 5 years. And it wouldn't be scheduled, like in year one we're doing this and year two we're doing that, but we could probably put on paper a little more detail of the types of projects that Councilwoman Bonanno is referring to, but giving it a little bit more documentary structure, which is, I think, where you're going. So that's the kind of thing that the trust could work on with assistance from my office and put something on paper. As Nick says, there is time between now and the election to do so. And it wouldn't be too difficult, I think, to actually working with the collaborative, and maybe we have a working group with the collaborative members of the collaborative and planning board members, maybe having that working group assembled to pursue that. So that might address some of the ideas and issues you have.
It would be helpful because there's not a lot of land left in Narragansett to buy, and $3 million is nothing when you're looking for a development. And I've said before, I really don't think that the town should become developers. We do have the Narragansett Housing Authority. I'm hoping that you're going to tie them in somehow. But I think a plan where you can say maybe this is like the first couple of years he's really looking at. And I think easy things would be to find housing that could be rehabilitated, and that would be something that it would be substantial for, but.
Yeah,
We just need more.
We've known all along that $3 million doesn't buy a whole lot of housing, particularly if you have to pay for the land.
Right.
So to the credit of the collaborative, they have been working on identifying land owned publicly or by nonprofits that might be had for very inexpensive or or no money. The property on Boston Neck Road being the first that's being pursued, owned by the town. As far as we know at the moment, there are no constraints on that property, legal constraints. Still not sure about physical. So That's one category of work that could be pursued. The other categories are assisting in nonprofits in developing land that they may own or have access to, and assisting private developers through financial assistance that can help them to leverage other funds. So to be a developer, for the town to be a developer, I agree with you, that's not where we want to be as an administration. And I don't think we have the staffing bandwidth to make it work. But to work in coordination with 2 or 3 other parties, and us being kind of the coordinating element, could work out.
I agree. And I believe that both Chris and Mr. Ferrara also had other ideas that we could, I mean, the state's going to have some extra funding. I'm hoping that the rep from Newport is very successful with getting someone, a Senate companion passed for the short-term rental tax and also perhaps just a seasonal rental as well, and there's some good funding there. But I'm encouraging you to do this, but I'm just very fiscally responsible, and I just want to see a plan of how we're going to spend our money, because we can stay here and say $3 million is not a lot, but there are people that live in this town that will never see $3 million in their lives, so it is a lot.
Madam President, if
Yeah.
I just have one more
Absolutely.
brief comment, and thank you everyone for your comments, but I'm glad Mike McLaughlin's here tonight as well, because the Narragansett Housing Authority just recently received a pretty significant grant, I believe in excess of $1 million, to do some rehabilitation to some of the existing units in town. So, Councilwoman Lawler, it is a good point. It is possible there are grants out there. I believe there was another grant project for something that's being developed in South Kingstown as well through the Narragansett Housing Authority, but anyway, so we're happy to put together a plan. I think, again, we do have one. I think we've been at this hundreds and hundreds of hours, so we'll put it together. It might be a little lengthy of all the ideas and, again, hypotheticals, but we're happy to do that for you.
Yeah, and that was great news with that $1 million grant, so thank you. And thank you for the work that you do on the Narragansett Housing Authority. Thank you very much. Okay, with any other?
Just
Just
one, I
final
have one
comments? Sure.
final comment. And Nick, even if, you know, we have a school funding formula, you know, we have all this state funding, and I'm just wondering if, I know it's kind of hard to get it to bubble up to the state, but let's say we had an affordable housing funding for each city and town, you know, let's say, but, you know, maybe they're putting it at specific projects per se of, as developers come forward, but, you know, something like that, even if it's a small amount, we could need any, you know, normal cases, people might help, just some elderly people that could get a grant, help stay in their home, so, but I think that's the goal. How do we get the state to understand? I think they understand there's a housing crisis statewide, but, you know, they're not specifically, a lot of the bills are not specifically aimed just at affordable housing. They're about production, just, you know, build 1,000 and it's going to fix the problem. And I think that's where some of the misinterpretation comes from of all it is. If they could even segregate that a little more and be a little clear about what each thing's going to happen. I know it's not really our issue, but just speaking from a lot of people that I hear from, that's what they want. They're really not sure where all the money's going, how it's going to happen. So I'd love to see something like that on a statewide basis where everybody could get a grant. Anyway, that's my comment on that, Nick. And it's hard to pull off with one committee. I understand that, but you know, I'd be happy to work with that with you.
Thank you, Councilman. Madam President, I just have one more question for Chris, and that way the public is aware too. So Chris, when it comes to this road bond, I just want a little bit of clarification. Is this something that is currently pending action by the General Assembly for an additional $4.5 million that was passed by a town council resolution, or is this existing funding we're talking about when it comes to this $4.5 million?
Existing funding already approved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I believe that's all the questions we have. I just want to say, sorry, your final comments, absolutely, sorry. Please, thank you.
I'm just not familiar with this type of bond, so I'm just hesitant because I just don't know about this type of bond. So usually when I deal with bonds, we have, you know, these 5 roads, Envine Estates, or the front of the building, and we put it in the resolution, it gets passed, it goes to the General Assembly. I know that there's a lot of plans, I get that, and it could be, the grant, the loans, grants to people to help with the housing, maybe property. I just don't understand how that works, and David can help me with, we go to bond, they approve it, we go to bond, we get $3 million. Do I have a timeline to spend this? Does it sit there for 10 years? I know it's not going to sit there for 10 years, but it's just very foreign to me. I just don't understand how this works.
And that's why we have our bond counsel here.
So you don't have to issue the 3 million at once. You could issue it in batches, for lack of a better word. There's tranches is the real word of $1 million a year. No doubt, perhaps increasing your costs. This bond will be a taxable bond. It will not be tax exempt. It will more likely than not be sold to the public, like the bond that was, like the bond for the liquor store. Yeah, the liquor store. It will probably be not a 20-year bond. It will be taxable. It will be sold or offered. It'll be put out to offer to one or more banks, and you will solicit requests for proposals from banks like that you've dealt with, like Washington Trust or Dime Bank of Norwich, Connecticut, or the smaller Centerville Bank, the smaller banks that would be interested in making it like a loan for 10 years. Some of them would let you pay it off early without penalty, because you can't have a penalty. You can have a premium, but you can't have a penalty. And you would hope that they would do this for more than 10 years. Otherwise, the payments would be not within your budget. So the transaction costs when you're talking about, multiple loans to a bank from a town are not as severe as they would be multiple issuances of public debt and with offering statements and securities filings and things like that. So it would be like a loan. So I do want to say that as you approach the election in September and October, you're going to have to, as required by state law, you're going to have to explain the purposes and the projects for which the bond will be used for. And I did put into the bond legislation a laundry list of things just to get it out there, what would be permissible uses. But, no doubt, you don't have any specific purchase of this $1 million land because you don't have the money to do it, so how far could you get? So it's going to be not as specific as perhaps our prior bonds in Narragansett have been. So then the ordinance is going to have to be more specific. So let's go through this. But this is a bond for $3 million for affordable housing services, affordable housing to be issued at any time and from time to time once the voters approve it. The money could be at once or in parcels be expended for affordable housing, including appropriations to the town's affordable housing funds. So instead of appropriating unrestricted fund balance to the trust, the bond money would be there, or both. It's up to you. And generally to implement your town's affordable housing plan that you've submitted under state law. And all these things are as determined by the town council. So if the town council approves, so how these things, just to remind everybody, we ask the General Assembly to pass the legislation. Presumably they pass it. It goes to the voters. You explain to the voters what it would be used for. They vote it up or down. At that point, and only after that point, the town council passes a resolution like we've had. Let's issue $1 million, let's issue $3 million at any time and from time to time. And so when that's done, the council will say, well, we are going to either authorize, just put it into the Affordable Housing Trust, and then you would have complete control at all times of, if you chose to exercise it, of what you were going to parcel that up for. For example, in Jamestown does this without a bond. They've had annual appropriations to their affordable housing fund. In most, the biggest, one thing they've used it for, which I'm more than familiar with, they were using it for construction loans to the nonprofits, because getting a construction loan to build, community housing did it, of Newport, to build this project or that project or whatever is prohibitively expensive. So in essence, the town was setting up a revolving fund and loaning them $150,000 and being the bank, and, you know, that has certain aggravations to it. But it was more doable that way. The town council could authorize a grant program. One thing they were talking about was a grant program. They have to rehabilitate homes in Westport under, Massachusetts law is somewhat different, but you could do that as well. But it's clear in the legislation that this includes not just buying land, but grants to private individuals, first-time home buyers, and all that. I've put in here whatever I thought I heard. Whether you choose to, or the council in the future chooses to authorize that is up to you. I just want to make it clear, when I do a bond act, it's not telling the council to issue those bonds. It is authorizing you to issue those bonds. Now, I'll give you an example. North Kingstown has had a sewer bond for $10 million authorized for, I don't know, 2008. Half of it has never been used. Why? It can't be used. It's not enough to do what they told the voters was going to be used. It just is never going to be used. It should be canceled, but no one's gotten around to that yet. So just like, you know, and if you say, why is the road bonds, the 2012 road bonds just being used? I want to say that in my opinion, or my observation, your whole program of there's only a certain number of roads you can handle internally every year, and it got stalled by COVID. That money would have been spent many moons ago. So, and we, you know, part of the reason to say, well, 12 million or 20 million, even though you're not going to do it all at the same time, is to say, well, this is the program. And it's not just, if you say, well, 2 million or 3 million roads for next year isn't going to get to my road, well, it was part of a program, however long that, you know, it got delayed substantially through no action of anyone here. So, so the other thing is on one hand, it's open-ended. It also says, like every bond act I've done for Narragansett, either that all funds and projects shall be carried out and contracts made by the council or as the council determines. If you choose to say, here's the 3 million, Affordable Housing Trust, you can do whatever you want. Go ahead. You can do that. So it's always, I've been your bond counsel since 1988, and I have zealously preserved the prerogatives of the council, whoever 5 of you that may be there, because you are the elected officials, and how you choose to decide to do something. Some councils don't want to get involved in the nitty-gritty of a project. Some do. It's up to you. And that's other than that, it is basically similar to all your other bond acts, except that I'm telling you it's going to be taxable. I can't do it. These uses. If you said you were buying the land, now some affordable housing bonds are tax exempt, issued on a tax exempt, which is a lower interest rate, but not in this kind of category, not this mixed bag. It would be, you know, more structured, like you're buying this land to build affordable housing on it, which you're not going to do or manage it. It's not going to be for that. If you were doing it to finance church community housing to build 50 units, then it's got some other tricks to it that could be done, but the transaction costs will swamp a bond like this, and you don't want to do that. So if there's anything, there is interest in the banks and something like that. what term or what rates or what interest rate it would be on a taxable. You have to presume it'll be linked to the 5 or 10-year Federal Home Loan Bank Board lending rate, because that's how they price things. So if there's anything else I can answer as far as practical or whatever.
I just have one question with what you just said. So if, I don't know how the number 3 million came, why that was picked, but I know Jamestown also just recently had a $3 million bond put in front of them for the same purpose. But that $3 million taxable bond, what would the difference really be from using, if we decided to go ahead and use the unassigned fund pension balance? Would there be a significant savings amount from that we could be able to realize more opportunity?
Depends what you earn on your unassigned fund balance. I'm also bond counsel to Jamestown. It's been discussed and proposed. Their uses were thinking in terms of buying down someone's house. If, for example, if there was a house there, they would purchase the development rights or to turn it into affordable housing, and the people they would give you $200,000, and the people would get to live there for as long as they live, and then they would have to leave. A totally different perspective and obviously $3 million wouldn't buy that many houses in Jamestown.
Right.
So at the average cost of, at least $500,000, that's 6 houses. So I think, I'm not sure that's proceeding in that vein. But they have a long history of this affordable housing, the fund being there and having uses for it. They also used it to kind of, I believe, smooth out some financing of their housing authority. So basically, it's just, to some degree, they were being a bank, and maybe that's part of the reasons, but there's administrative costs and stuff, and personnel, you need to do that, so.
Because fiscally, they're about in the same shape as we. They're up at the 4% tax levy as well, I believe, Jamestown. No?
It's similar, but it's different.
Okay.
I don't think they have as much OPEB.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, the
But
OPEB.
again, that's not what I do. You also have a financial advisor that the same one as Jamestown, Steve Masseroni of PFM, that has advised the town on its bonds for, I don't know, ever, 20 years at least, so all those things can be fleshed out.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. This was very informative, and I just want to say how much I appreciate all the information and expertise on this topic, so thank you to each and every one of you. Thank you to the honorable council members as well for attending, and I guess that wraps it up, and so we will adjourn the